would have killed for a list like this. That's why I'm making it for you guys. I make this for the younger version of me, or maybe the starting out version of me on the path, who would have just gained so much from just cutting all the crap and just getting like these concise lists. And what you can get with study is someone's 40, 50, even 60 years of wisdom, study, practice, trial and error, and they can distill that down into a 500-page book. You can literally be reading a passage from a spiritual text and have a fucking awakening right there in that cafe. Healing is very important for awakening because you need a calm, focused, healed, effective mind to properly do awakening work. When you go into a retreat, is like you start tapping into that 90% of like that deep blue glacier that's like under the water, that's like super deep in the dark, cold abyss, and you just start kind of going down deeper and deeper and chipping away and seeing what's there. You're not just doing this as like, oh, I have to do my contemplation practice. You're like, what is the cup? Like, I want to know. You're asking, like, what is this thing? Am I feeling more connected to life? Am I feeling more love, more joy, more freedom? And use that as a metric to kind of choose which practices fit you best. Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to Lion's Heart. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about the top 10 practices specifically geared to increasing your consciousness for spiritual awakening. And in this video, I'm going to be going through numbers 1 through 5. So in the last video, we went through numbers 6 through 10. And here we'll be going through 1 through 5. So if you haven't seen 6 through 10, go ahead and check that out. So just a reminder, this list is specifically geared towards spiritual awakening. This list has been compiled over 8 years of trial and error and study. And I've distilled it down to these top practices that have been most effective for me and other people I've seen on the path. So I just want to make a caveat here before we dive in, is the importance of practice. I've heard this notion going around that, you're already enlightened, there's nothing to do, just be as you are, just be awareness, you're already the truth. And this is true in a sense, obviously this is the truth, but is that really, your experience, or the people who are saying this is experience? And it's very unlikely that it is. So there's definitely a lot of value in practice and discipline and spiritual practice to kind of chip away at the mind's conditioning and dissolving the ego. And without this, you're really still just lost in the ego and the mind. As much as you may want to tell yourself, I'm already enlightened, I'm already the truth, you're still going to be day to day in your mind, in your thoughts, and in separation ultimately. Another positive of practice is that you gain mastery, skill, and wisdom and understanding in these practices. So you actually, as you do these practices, you gain discipline, you build character, you build more of a solid sense of self and confidence and self-esteem. And you can also learn to love these practices. They don't have to be, a drag or something you have to do. These practices can be something you love and something you deeply enjoy, the best part of your day. And another point before we dive in is the quality over the quantity. So what's actually more powerful is actually that quality of that hour of that meditation or yoga where you're really focused, you're really engaged, you're in that flow state, and you're really getting those deep spiritual insights. So these following practices are extremely powerful in and of themselves. If you were to just do one of these practices every day, you would have massive spiritual gains if you kept that discipline. Because what happens is these practices actually feed off of each other. They actually amplify each other. So if you're doing meditation and yoga and contemplation, these three things kind of become their own, they become like a nuclear bomb. Like they just explode off of each other and become bigger and bigger and more amplified. So it's not just like you're 10xing if you do these 10 practices, you're almost like 1,000xing your gains. And if you do these practices, if you do even a few of them, you'll be ahead of like 95% of other practitioners or other people on the path. You'll just be that far ahead of the curve. Not that it's a competition, but this is kind of just the truth. And when I was starting my spiritual path, I would have killed for a list like this. That's why I'm making it for you guys. Just, cut and paste, just like no bullshit, what works. And this is coming directly from someone who's been doing this for almost 10 years. So I really wanted to make this list powerful and effective for you guys. And yeah, I really kind of put a lot of time and effort into this, so I hope you get a lot out of it and enjoy. So coming in at number 5, we've got study. And I want you to just briefly imagine yourself lost in the jungle, right? You're in the Vietnamese jungle, you're cutting through the weeds, you got a machete, you don't know where you're going, and you're lost. You have a vague notion of where to go, how to get home, but for the most part, you're completely lost. It's getting cold, it's getting dark, you're fearing that you're gonna die soon. All of a sudden, out of the corner of your eye comes a man with a machete who seems pretty friendly, and he says he knows the way out. He knows how to, get you back home. He's walked this path. He's gone through all the traps. He's gone through all the tricks, and he knows how to get you home. So what are you gonna do? Do you trust this guy and you go with him, or you say, no, I'm good. I'm gonna keep trying my way. I'm gonna keep going with my machete through the dark woods. I don't trust you. I can do it myself. I'm too proud to go with you, right? So most people would take their chance and go with the guy with machete who claims to know the way. And that is exactly what it's like on the spiritual path. What you can get with a teacher and what you can get with study is someone's 40, 50, even 60 years of wisdom, study, practice, trial and error, and they can distill that down into a 500-page book. And you can read that book, and within a month or 2 months, you will absorb a good amount of their wisdom and their hard work. And that is just so invaluable. What's also cool is many of these guys also are still alive, and these mystics and practitioners, and they have YouTube channels and courses and workshops, and you can go directly and work with these masters, some of the wisest people in the world, and you can sit with them and study with them and ask them questions and have them help you. Another huge value of study is that these teachers and these authors and these masters can be like a guide for you. They can be like your guiding light on the path, and they really help to keep you focused. And when you're in the spiritual path and you're in your real world, in the real life, you have your job, you have your relationships, your family, things like this, it's easy to get distracted and kind of lose interest on the path or pick up some other things. But if you just have that book with you and you're just reading an hour a day, that really helps to keep you on track with your spiritual path. I've had times in my life where I'm completely lost. I'm lost in Maya. I'm lost in the illusion. I don't want to do any spiritual work, but I just have that book and I'm just reading a little bit of it every day. And all of a sudden I'm just just 1 hour of that reading just completely shifts my mind, and I just get completely refocused on what matters to me, which is awakening, which is spirituality. And you can literally have an awakening while reading. Like we need to disregard this notion of reading being kind of like this simple thing. It's not that powerful. Like you can literally be reading a passage from a spiritual text and have a fucking awakening right there in that cafe because of something you read, and then all of a sudden something just clicks and it just hits you and you just get this like deep insight. Another cool thing about studying is you can cross-reference authors, right? Like you can just take in all this wisdom from all these different teachers and traditions and schools, and you can cross-reference them, and what happens is you get a really broad vision of what awakening is and what spirituality is, and you have all these different perspectives. So you have like the main truth or the main truths, and then around them you just have all these different ways of looking at it, all these different ways of speaking about it, of thinking about it, and your mind is beginning to make all these neural connections around this study and these topics. And with time, if you read enough material, you'll be a master in that field. It's like studying for a PhD. You'll have like a PhD in spiritual knowledge. And a key point here is, how are you reading? So I think this is where a lot of people get stuck, is like if you're reading, like you're just kind of like going through like, oh, I have to hit 25 pages a day, so I'm just reading. I have to hit my goal, and you're just not really absorbing the information. That's actually less effective than if you read 5 pages, but you're really studying the material. You're really getting into the skin of the author, and you're really feeling like, what are they saying? What was their mind like when they wrote this? Like, what are they trying to convey to me? Because you know what? There's always going to be another book you need to read. There's always going to be another video on YouTube. There's always going to be another course. But if you really can just like slow down and really understand what is being said, it's much more powerful than having that quantity. It's that quality of understanding. And another point on study is, if you can, find an actual school, like find an actual spiritual school or community where you can go, because these people will help you see different perspectives. They'll point out, things that you didn't know or you didn't even hear about. They'll broaden your awareness. And if you can sit with an actual master, like I've done many retreats and workshops with masters directly, asking them questions, sitting with them. And they can just 10x, 100x your gains, because they're just pointing out all these traps. They're pointing out things you don't see. They're so wise, and they just have a really powerful way of teaching, embodied teaching that you get to see directly. And just a tip on study is you really have to set aside that time. So it's like going to the gym, you have like your hour of going to the gym. You really have to have like an hour of study, almost like you're a student of spirituality. And to end this point, here are my top 5 authors and teachers that I like to study from and I've gotten the most out of. So number 1 is Ken Wilber. Number 2 is Peter Ralston. Number 3 is Ramana Maharshi. 4 is David Hawkins. And 5 is Ahajananda at the school, yoga school Hidraya, which is in Mazunte, and there's one in France as well. So coming in at number 4, we've got psychedelics. And if we were speaking about just like awakening in and of itself, they would probably be number 1 because they can so powerfully break you out of your ego. But because you always come down from psychedelics and they don't really cause a permanent change in your consciousness, I've put them at number 4 because there's no denying their power, but they also can be a trap in and of themselves, and they don't really provide that permanent gain in insight and awareness. Psychedelics, again, have been used for thousands of years by wise men, traditions, humanity, probably hundreds of thousands of years. And they've always been kind of a pillar, like a pin, a cornerstone in human expansion. So psychedelics can actually remove your mental blocks and your mental screenings and unlock things about reality that you were completely unaware of, that normally it would have taken maybe 10 years of meditation to get to. There's a few things that psychedelics can kind of quickly and directly awaken you to. The nature of infinity of reality, unconditional love, which you ultimately are, which is ultimately the structure of reality. You can come to the realization that death is illusory. You can realize yourself as awareness. You can see the oneness of the being of one, the being of God, the being of everything of which you are and you are a part of. It can reveal things to you about your ego and your mind and in ways that you weren't aware of, how your mind is functioning, how your mind is tricking you, parts of the ego that maybe were suppressed and repressed and kind of kept away. You can get insights into the illusory nature of mind and consciousness, reality, like really understand how this is being generated, how you're constructing reality, and how ultimately none of this is actually, tangibly real. And you can also get insights about, your own life and your own habits, your own ways of living that you might want to change, and really kind of deeply feel into, how precious life is and how do you want to live and where in your day-to-day you're maybe could be improving or being more effective and disciplined. You can get insights into relationships. You can get trauma healing from your childhood. And you can ultimately just see stories you're making up and where you're limiting yourself and how you're, being a victim in these things. So there's a lot of power in psychedelics. They can also be a motivation in that they provide deep insights and really reconnect you with your passion for the truth, your passion for spirituality. And similar to the books, kind of keep that guiding light, that focus on, what you're doing, what you're up to, and what the ultimate goal is, which is, spiritual realization. And a good way to look at healing, what does that have to do with awakening? Healing is very important for awakening because you need a calm, focused, healed, effective mind to properly do awakening work. And when you're healing your traumas, you're healing your emotions, you're just like removing these blocks, these ego blocks. And with psychedelics, there's definitely some points I need to make. They're very powerful on your spiritual path to getting started, and they can, provide these awakenings. But ultimately, there is a point where you need to drop psychedelics, where you need to just be able to stand alone on your own consciousness, on your own insights, on your own awareness, and not need psychedelics to show you these things or to feel connected or to have these awakenings. At best, they might serve in as like a check-in tool to just check in with those things, see how you're doing, see how the path is feeling. But other than that, you do need to kind of let them go at some point. Also, psychedelics require a lot of maturity, intention, wisdom, respect. I mean, you can't just dive into psychedelics. You have to, in my opinion, people should have at least 2 years of spiritual study, doing retreats, really going into their mind, making sure they're stable there, reading spiritual books, understanding the material, before they start to use psychedelics to try to like glimpse at these truths. And I'll just say that like clean consciousness gains that you get from like clean, meditation, yoga, natural things, they just feel a lot more like clean. They just feel a lot more like solid and magical and, grounded in reality, like more real than psychedelics, which have more of like a dreamy kind of like illusory feel. It's kind of slippery, where if you're really doing like clean consciousness gains, there's something really solid about that, and knowing that you did it all within your own self. You didn't take anything outside of you. So again, psychedelics are good for, beginning on the path, getting these insights if you really need to, like, you really want to experience unconditional love and it's just not happening. Sure, take some MDMA or, that oneness, maybe do 5-MeO DMT if you're just like dying to feel that. But, what's important is that you bring those insights into your day-to-day life and you integrate them. You don't just get lost in the psychedelics, because that can lead to nihilism, bitterness. You're just angry because you're not reaching what the psychedelics have shown you. And I want you to think of psychedelics as like little pieces of candy on the path, right? So like as you're walking this path, you're walking up the mountain, psychedelics are like, okay, I'll take a little candy, here's a little boost, here's a little reminder why I'm doing this. Maybe the path is getting dry, I take some mushrooms and it's fun, it reminds me of the joy of life. And that's a good way to look at psychedelics, like these little pieces of candy on the path that you can, take every once in a while to keep things interesting and fun and alive. All right, so coming in at number 3, we've got retreats. And retreats are extremely powerful. In this world we live in with dopamine, constant news, constant alerts, watching YouTube, we're addicted to our phones, we're addicted to Netflix. We have all these relationships and things we need to do and, laundry, groceries, all this stuff. Retreats just cut all of that out, and you just get to be, it's such a delicious time. You just get to be completely alone with yourself. You rest, you relax, you go into awareness. You don't have to do everything. You don't have social obligations. You don't have your phone to addict you and distract you. And retreats are a time where you can really just go within and really like unwind yourself, and also think deeply about life and consciousness and awareness and focus on meditation and all these things. And overall, it's just every time you do a retreat, you just get so many gains, so many consciousness gains. And retreats are really where the rubber meets the road, right? So this is where all your practice comes into reality. This is where you really see how everything you've been doing, your daily meditation practice, your yoga, really in retreats is where you really see those gains in your consciousness. What's cool about retreats is it's just you and your mind. So it's a little scary. There's a reason a lot of people don't do retreats, because they're scared of their own minds. But in a way it's beautiful, because you can really just get out of the distractions and go deeper and deeper into your subconscious. And you just have these, awakenings and insights and profound realizations that you can't really have day to day, because you're so distracted, you're so in the ego, you're so with social obligations. And retreats just provide this beautiful container for having these like awakening insights and experiences. Retreats are also deeply purifying. So because you don't have all these distractions and all these things that you have to do, you can just go deeper and deeper into your subconscious. And what you're doing is you're purifying these emotions that you haven't been able to tap into or get to because they've been so, deeply suppressed. Also, what happens on retreats is as you're purifying the mind and you really kind of go through the boredom phases and the resistance and the, existential crisis here and there, is the mind starts to naturally begin to just like contemplate and wonder and meditate on itself. Like you don't have to set time and things like to think about who am I, awareness, what is reality. Like the mind just begins to naturally become philosophical and become very present and aware. And it's not really a practice. You don't have to force anything. Like that's what's awesome about retreats is you have so much time that you don't feel pressure to rush to do anything. And the mind just naturally begins to like open and expand and contemplate. And lastly, I just want to provide the metaphor of like an iceberg. So like in our day-to-day life, we're like the top part of an iceberg where there's like 10% showing, right? That's like the parts of our minds that we're aware of. That's what we're using. That's how deeply we're, usually connected to reality. And we're just kind of functioning off that 10% for survival reasons. And when you go into a retreat, is like you start tapping into that 90% of like that deep blue glacier that's like under the water, that's like super deep in the dark, cold abyss. And you just start kind of going down deeper and deeper and chipping away and seeing what's there and healing around it and getting insights from it. And that's what's amazing about retreats is like you have this glacier and you get to go deeper and deeper into your subconscious mind and deeper and deeper into yourself and really unveil these aspects of your mind and yourself that are kind of hidden under that layer. A recommendation on retreats is if you're first starting out, I definitely recommend that you find a school, program. There's Hijraya, there's Vipassana, there's Zen meditation retreats, but anything where you're kind of supported in an environment where they're taking care of food, living, they're providing classes, they're providing places to meditate, it's quiet. This is much better because if you try to do it alone, it's very likely that you'll get lost in the ego backlash. Maybe you'll whip out your phone, maybe you'll, get depressed and you'll stop meditating. So it's important when you're starting to kind of have that container, and then later on you can do like solo retreats in the woods, for example. All right, coming in at number 2, we've got contemplation. And contemplation is a not very well-known technique for awakening work. Most people focus on meditation and these things, but contemplation is different in that you're trying to get a direct insight on something by focusing on what is that thing, like literally what is it, and you're kind of questioning rather than focus. So meditation, yoga is more about focus. Contemplation is more about kind of questioning and wondering and holding your awareness on a certain question until you get a direct insight on the nature of that thing or question. So here's an example of contemplation. You take an hour out of your day and you focus on a question. What is a cup? What is a cup? What is its nature? What is it made out of? Like what is that thing there? I'm calling it a cup. Like what is it, right? So you hold your focus for an hour on this question of like what is a cup? And as your mind kind of gets distracted and goes into stories, and then you just keep coming back, what is that? What is that? What is that? Right? So you're contemplating it. You're just kind of wondering about it while it's there. And some pillars of contemplation, thanks to Peter Ralston for sharing these, is that you remain open. So you remain open to the question or the answer or the insight. What is a cup? I'm open. I'm open to the answer. And you create the possibility that you can become conscious of what that is. So what is a cup? You're kind of waiting for the answer. Like it's possible for me to know what the nature, what this is, literally. And wanting to know. So you're not just doing this as like, oh, I have to do my contemplation practice. You're like, what is a cup? Like I want to know. You're asking, like what is this thing? Because you want to know. And you kind of have that yearning. You bring that into the contemplation. Another pillar is focus. You remain focused on the question and the pillars of openness, possibility, wanting to know, etc. Also, you're present. So you're asking, what's the cup right here, right now, in this moment? What is the cup? That thing right there. My mind isn't anywhere else. I'm here with what's here right now, and I'm questioning it. One powerful thing to contemplate if we're doing awakening work is this question, who am I? And this has been presented by Ramana Maharshi and many mystics. And basically, you just kind of keep your focus on yourself as this existence, as this awareness. And you kind of drop the stories of what your mind is telling you. And you just kind of keep coming back, who am I? And you just keep coming back to that question, who am I? Who is here experiencing this? Okay, my mind comes up with some answers, is telling me some stories, and then I just keep coming back, yeah, but who am I? Who am I? Keeping that open, questioning, wondering attitude. What's cool about contemplation is you can do it anywhere and anytime. You can contemplate on the bus, you can contemplate while you're in line. And a good metaphor for contemplation is like, think of it like you're holding a rock, right? And you're looking at this rock, and that rock is your question, like, who am I? And so you're just kind of like checking all angles of it. You're just kind of holding it there. You're looking at it. You're feeling it, you're getting the texture down. And this is the basis of contemplation, is you're just kind of like looking at something and you're wondering about it over and over again with an open attitude. And lastly, remember that contemplation, the answers come as an insight and not a thought. So you don't have the thought like, oh, the cup is an object which is made out of atoms and blah, blah, blah. Like you really get it in an experiential level where you're just like, oh, I now know what this is. I had an insight into it. All right, and coming in at number 1 is meditation. Meditation is like the OG practice of spiritual awakening. Meditation is pretty well known, but I still don't think it gets enough attention for how powerful of a tool it is to calm the mind, have awakenings, have insights, and to ultimately just be happier in life in general. Meditation should just be like a cornerstone pillar of daily life, daily practice to just keep bringing the mind back to that calmness, to that center. And it's just such a powerful practice, like in and of itself, for so many things. And the benefits are just literally endless. And for those that are seriously focused on awakening work, and you maybe say, like, yeah, I've been meditating for 5 years. It's like, how are you meditating? Like, is it focused, industrial level, like deep meditation? Or are you just kind of sitting there thinking a little bit? Your mind's like, okay, I'm doing my meditation like 20 minutes a day. It's like, no, like if you really want to use meditation in a powerful way, it needs to be concentrated, focused, like the peak time of the day when your mind is at its best, and you really just are focusing on your meditation maybe for a full hour. And there's literally 100 ways to meditate. There's so many different techniques and forms, but the most powerful for spiritual awakening and enlightenment consciousness work that I've found is to focus on the awareness of the awareness. So it's like you have this context of everything that you're experiencing, like your mind, objects in the room, yourself, your thoughts, and then what you're focusing on is kind of like the container for that. Like, where is all of that occurring? How is all of that happening? You're focusing more on the awareness that is holding these things, that is aware of these things, rather than these things. And having a daily meditation routine is absolutely vital for consciousness work. And I want you to think of it as like you're slowly chipping away at a rock. Like you're this water and you're slowly chipping away at a rock, which this rock is your ego and your your frontal cortex where the sense of self resides, and you're kind of slowly dissolving this sense of self over a long period of time. It accumulates over years and years to where the ego sense of self slowly just kind of starts to dissolve into awareness, and you don't even realize it happening. But every day you're chipping away with that hour of practice, and soon enough, before you know it, you're kind of living in that state of expanded awareness. There's 3 major forms of meditation that I want to share. Obviously, one is this witness awareness, where you're being aware of the awareness. But if that gets dry or that gets old, you can move on to neti neti, which is where you are meditating and you're recognizing, everything that is coming within the context of awareness, so all the content. You're just labeling like, okay, I recognize this, I see this, but it's not me. This is not me. This is not me. Everything that I'm aware of is not me because it can't be me because I'm aware of it. So who's aware, right? So you're just going through everything that your mind is telling you is you or part of you, and you're just saying neti neti, like this is not me, I'm not this, I'm not that. And the third is do nothing. So this is just a great technique for if you just want to like kind of turn everything off, turn your focus off, and just be more in a state of being, is where you just sit and you do nothing and you just allow the mind to be, and you just kind of witness and allow. And I love this form of meditation because it's really relaxing. You can do it for like 6 hours where you just sit there, you do nothing, you keep bringing your mind back to this notion of do nothing, and it's really just an allowance and a surrender in that sense. All right, guys, that's it. That's the top 10 list of ways to increase your consciousness. I hope you can take these practices into account and try them out and see if they work for you. Again, it's different what's going to work for different people. Some might resonate more with yoga. Some might be better at retreats or contemplation, or fasting is more powerful for them. So you don't need to take these as written in stone. It really depends on what works for you. But I've found these, and many spiritual traditions have found these to be extremely powerful ways to increase consciousness and have awakenings and insights. And always keep the question as you're doing these practices, is this keeping me on the path? Is this getting me closer to my goal of awakening or the truth? Am I feeling more connected to life? Am I feeling more love, more joy, more freedom? and use that as a metric to kind of choose which practices fit you best. And as always, enjoy the process, love the learning process, love the awakening process, enjoy the difficulties, the resistances, the challenges. It's all part of the dream, it's all part of the path, and enjoy. Much love. Talk to you guys soon.